The Foundation for Open Government was recently taken to task for considering giving a Dixon Award, that's their annual award, for transparency to Governor Susana Martinez and Attorney General Gary King, despite the fact that the governor had been a defendant in public records suits and Mr. King was found to be in violation of the State Inspections of Public Records Act. Journalist Heath Hausman, the actual recipient of this year's Dixon Award, wrote a scathing commentary critical of FOG's board's president for seeking to appease politicians and calling for FOG to make some major changes. Dan, you actually have been outspoken about this in times past at this table, maybe not this table, this new table, but tables past, about the need for transparency at FOG. And there's a fundamental question, it seems to me, moving forward here. We know what the problems are. They're trying to get through it. But the makeup of the board gives people a lot of heartburn. Can a sitting politician actually be a proper person on a board like this? And why
look,
not?
let me just tell you, it's irrelevant who we're talking about, Gene. I can tell you when I was in the legislature, and I hate to be that guy back when I was there, but when I was in the legislature, when FOG walked in, your knees rattled. If you knew they were coming to testify on a bill, if you weren't for it, you didn't show up. Wow. You didn't show up all day in the Capitol. If you were in the chair, you supported FOG. It has turned into an organization that everybody is laughing at. And it's a shame because they have a very important role, I think. And I think years ago, not that long ago, they played a very important role. I think they have become they've become an organization that no longer has any moxie. They've lost all political capital, and I think that they are trying to appease everybody when in the past they had a mission and they stuck to that mission. Right. You knew that if you had a bill that was going to make it less transparent, they were going to oppose it. It didn't matter if you were Raymond Sanchez, Speaker of the House, Gary Johnson, Governor in New Mexico, Dan Foley, freshman state rep, they'd oppose it. You also knew, and the gentleman who used to run the organization, when he would show up, I remember I had a bill one year, my freshman year, that was opposed by Raymond and all the Dems and the trial lawyers and everything. And that guy sat next to me and presented that bill. And you couldn't get a lobbyist to show up and sit with me my first couple of years because they knew what was going to happen. He had no qualms about it. And what they're doing, the work he's done and the memory and the foundation he laid, in my opinion, borders on criminal. This is wrong what they've done to this organization, and without them filling that gap, there's nobody in this state doing it.
And Tracy Dingaman, you knew who we speak of here.
Bob Johnson.
Bob Johnson. I appreciate Dan's point right there. Go ahead and pick up on that.
Well, and I do too. I'm glad to hear such a rousing defense of FOG. And I would say, yes, there has been sort of a deterioration and kind of a disarticulation of the mission over the last couple of years. But I still have hope for FOG. I still think that it is a very, very important organization, even if you don't think that it is, if you think it doesn't matter to you. I mean, if you pay taxes, if you apply for a government job, all of these things, transparency is important, and these are folks who have been fighting from day one for transparency in government. And another point I want to make is under Bob Johnson, this organization was never about partisanship.
Right.
I think that unfortunately partisanship has reared its ugly head in FOG and has really kind of confused what the mission is. Let's not forget what the mission was.
You know, and I remember, I don't mean to interrupt, but I remember there was a, I can't remember who it was, but on the tip of my tongue, there was a legislator that had a bill that Republicans weren't for, Gary Johnson wasn't for, and this Democrat was sitting before a committee putting on a bill with Bob Johnson on one side and Pat Rogers on the other side, presenting the bill. And I mean, you were just sitting there looking at that group going, interesting. That's a group with some moxie. That's a group with some clout right there. And I think they've lost it.
You know, Internet, speaking of losing things, to pick up on what Tracy said for you, is this idea of what she's mentioning is the brand, basically, has been diminished. Because the thing they had going for them was they were the honest third broker. Right? They didn't tilt.
They had their mission, and they followed their mission. And then, like you said, dilution of mission with politics, with a mission like this, which is about transparency, it's just really, really sad. I have hope, though. I think if they really focus on their mission and kind of get their board together and
do you think
build it up.
Let me ask you a question I asked Dan, but a bit of a twist. Can journalists credibly serve on this board?
I think journalists should be on it. I think that's a problem that they have so few now, because this is all about transparency, openness, and I think journalists have the most interest in that. I think all citizens should be interested in it and are interested in it, but journalists are passionate about it. So it's disappointing to see the loss of journalists on the board.
Interesting. The ED roulette, as I call it around Albuquerque. It's
Yeah.
like, it's the thing, to
The
be an executive director.
just to clarify for the folks at home. Yes.
And it's not just a Fog thing. The ED roulette is kind of an
Sure.
Albuquerque thing right now. But for our conversation here, how important is it to have that Bob Johnson type person at the top of the pyramid that people trust in
So
Fog?
part of what we've seen happen with the loss of Bob is that there have been a series of executive directors, sort of of varying strengths. I actually thought that when Gwyneth Dolan, who as our viewers at home may know, has had a big role here at New Mexico PBS, I've thought that the year that she took on that position, there was a lot of hope for that role, and she really was only there for a year. But the profile of the group rose again during that year, and then she left. But what we've seen here is a shift from a very strong executive director under Bob, a real champion for the mission and for the organization, to a much stronger board. And that happens when you're not able to find, it's been about 6 years, they haven't been able to find that sort of magical, strong executive director, strong in the mission, strong in the activities, strong in the management of the organization. And so the board has sort of taken over. And what has happened, I think, is that strong board leaders have kind of subsumed some of the mission of the organization. And you end up with individuals on the board
With an agenda.
with an agenda. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. You said it for me.
You have to be careful. You got that legal degree.
Whatever. It needed to be said with an agenda. And I think that this organization needs to shift back toward a more balanced, because I think we're starting to see, unfortunately, the executive director become more of an administrator and less of a champion. And that's a real loss for that organization.
Tracy, the other makeup, so to speak, as it stands now, you've got journalists, you've got politicos, but some people who are involved in shaping of policy. We talked about the Winston Brooks thing and people that put out mailers and such. And Doug Turner's on that board as well. And Doug's been at this table, and I used to work with Doug under contract some years ago, but he's also in the business of shaping policy with a certain political leaning. And what I'm not proposing here is that people like that be kept off boards like this, but does that give people pause when you have people that shape policy on boards, transparency organizations like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, him being on the board is not something that not one of my uppermost concerns about Fog. But yeah, certainly. I don't think, if you want to talk about people with an agenda. I mean, and this isn't a bad thing for him. Of course he has an agenda.
That's right. I agree with that.
So, I think if you can look at somebody and say, oh, I know exactly where that person is coming from, he might not be a good fit for Fog. I also agree that with Antoinette that absolutely it should be about journalists. We should have a lot more. There should be a lot more journalists on that board.
I think I think that there's a couple things. One is, which is going to send us off in a whole nother direction. I'll use that second. But first is, I think that Fog had a very specific mission, which was for open government. If you were about voter ID, if you were about taxes, Fog didn't show up. It wasn't Fog's mission. Fog's mission was, how do we make it easier for people to find out what you're doing at any level of government? And so when you strayed from that, Bob was able to bring you back to it. I think that focus is now gone out here for many reasons. I'm not opposed to the journalists being out there. I think journalists should be. But as I've said at this table many times, and I just want to make sure I'm consistent, is that I think the transparency item goes both ways. And I think we have a problem in this state with a lot of folks who either claim to be journalists or who are journalists that have a vested interest, and yet they want to run and hide behind the journalism moniker, and they don't want to let you know that they're out working on a campaign, they're helping a party get elected, they have a belief, and it's hard to separate those two. And I think what's happened at Fog is a lot of those people have assumed positions of leadership on both sides, and that's become the problem.
And that's where voids do that, don't they? They really do. Everybody rushes in. It's just human nature. Just ahead, we look at oral arguments that went before the state Supreme Court last week over the issue of same-sex marriage.